I'm Mark Bouris and this is Straight Talk.
The previous world record was 30 hours and 11 minutes. Yeah, I did 40 hours and 7 minutes. Just like the idea of seeing what's possible.
Blakey Johnston, what a legend this guy is. Now the longest serving session in the world.
It was 5-6 foot straight closeouts, constant waves, was hard work. So I was working a lot harder than I anticipated.
Are you exhausted?
I was cooked by the time the first sunrise came up.
How do you manage that so you don't get overwhelmed?
I think it's drawing on past experiences. My dad took his own life 10 years ago. I look back and think of some things that he missed out on, you know, like he was obviously a very selfless man that put his family first, and to a point that it was detrimental to his own mental health. You know, when you see progress and set goals and go after certain things, that you become a better version of yourself along the way.
Blakey Johnston, welcome to Straight Talk.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, I know you got no shoes on. It's freezing fucking cold outside. Tell me the deal. Do you not normally wear shoes?
I don't wear shoes very often. Spend my whole life out on the beach. So just evolved from that.
Are you comfortable with no shoes, like walking around the street, like cold days, hot days, whatever?
Yeah, totally adapted to it. It was by accident. I hurt myself surfing in Desert Point in Indonesia about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was training for a marathon, my first marathon, and then the wound just wouldn't heal. You know, I get ulcerated and wouldn't heal. So I went to put shoes on and run in Bali because I was training, and it just bled out. So I just took them off, ran on the treadmills, got home expecting to put shoes on, middle of winter, and then just did the same thing. The wound hadn't healed because I was surfing so much, and just went barefoot through winter, and then ended up doing the marathon barefoot.
Like a running marathon?
The Sydney Marathon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did that with did no shoes, no food, no water, no supplements, and just tried to test myself as much as I could.
So you like to push yourself. That's your deal.
Yeah.
You're a Cronulla born and bred?
Yeah.
Or the Shire boy?
Yeah.
Shire born and bred?
Yep.
Cronulla
Yep.
or some other part?
No, Cronulla.
Cronulla itself?
Never more than, so Dad was a builder, so we were never more than 5 minutes. We did a few renovations growing up with four brothers, so I was always a bit mayhem, but always really close to the shore, so I spent, every minute I could down the beach.
So how'd you first, your dad was a surfer.
Dad was a surfer.
I'm getting it. And mum?
Not mum.
No.
No, not mum. She was from Miranda, a few suburbs back.
A bit different. Miranda's a bit different to Cronulla.
It's a little bit.
Especially back then.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite looked at the same.
Yeah.
I can say that my parents moved to Cronulla after I moved out of home, but my parents moved to Cronulla. So I got a bit of an idea about Cronulla. My brother and sister grew up there.
Yeah. My
younger brother and sister grew up there. It was a bit different back then, of course. Those days, the strip in Cronulla, the shopping centre, the strip there. I remember there was a place, there's a fish and chip shop. I don't know if it's still there, but what we used to do when I used to go surfing, especially in the cold days, we used to go in there. We'd go next door into the joint, buy a loaf of bread, but it wasn't cut. It was not sliced, unsliced bread. Pull the guts out and go into the fish and chip shop and get a bag of chips, stuff the chips into the loaf of bread. And that was our meal after we'd been surfing for hours and hours and hours. So that sort of stuff still go on?
Yeah, a little bit. Groms were always down on each corner shop getting their hot chips between their surfs. But even from when I grew up, it's a bit different now. People are just rocking up. You know, there's so many parents that do so much for their kids, you know. We weren't super raw, but we had a lot of freedom, you know, just living near the beach, popping down to the fish and chip shop and doing a similar thing to you, you know. But it has changed a little bit in that sense.
I was allowed to travel. Like my parents didn't give a shit. They never thought, oh, where's Mark? I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd catch a train in. They walk from Cronulla we used to walk to Green Hills because that's where we used to like to surf out there, down there. And like today, your parents would be saying, no, we'll drop you there and we'll pick you up at so-and-so time and don't talk to anybody. And
tracking you on the phone.
Yeah, like they've got the phone there.
Yeah.
We had no phones, of course. But, and, you know, I don't know, whatever we got wasn't much money, but get your lunch somehow and catch a train as well. It's funny, Cronulla was a pretty safe joint, those days at least. I mean, obviously had the Wanda murder, so it wasn't real cool, but generally speaking, Cronulla was pretty safe. Everyone sort of pretty much knew each other's face. They looked after each other a little bit, looked out for each other.
Yeah.
Maybe not looked after, looked out. Occasionally you had a few dramas down there at the wall. Allura there.
Yeah, a little territorial back then. I've heard many stories.
I had a few run-ins a few times, but generally speaking, it was pretty good. Do you reckon Cronulla has changed as a joint?
Yeah. It has dramatically changed with the infrastructure and the amount of the volume of people,
Money?
the money coming in. At its core, I think it still has that, that strong sense of community, and it's needed a few things to happen to get to where it is now. And, I think it's nearly 20 years, almost 20 years since the Cronulla riots, which sort of...
Is that long?
Yeah, nearly 20 years. I think it was 2005, around then.
So the Batuta guys are taking the piss out of it at the moment on Paramount Plus, I think. They've done a series, one of which is the Cronulla riots.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's sort of taking the piss out of it. But if you go back to the Cronulla riots, were you around then?
I was, yeah.
Do you remember it?
I do remember it. I was down there on that day in the morning.
And was that... I mean, I'd be interested to get your take on it. You're a born and bred Cronulla boy, surfer, white as a driven snow, very white, like blondie, which is pretty unusual in today's society, but not so much in Cronulla. But what was going on that day? Do you remember? Like, how did you what was your sense of it?
Well, I turned up in the morning. There was the famous text message that went out to obviously thousands of people. And I turned up in the morning just to see what it was about. I'm down there every day surfing or working because I own the surf school. And I was only about, 24, 25 at the time. And I went down there and I saw Dog Marsh, who's a local pro surfer, really respected person from our area. He lives in France now. And we sort of walked around. We bumped into each other. And we both went, we don't know anyone around here. What's going on? Didn't see there was any real agenda or anything other than, look up. Because previously there'd been a altercation between some people from the western suburbs and the lifeguards. And that was it all about, just standing up for what seemed like something that wasn't going to escalate like it did. And we just walked up to see what it was about and sort of show a sense of community to some point. And we sort of the only people we knew was one another. So that was, and I was living really close at the time. I just walked home. And then, it was just it was a bit of a scene all day long until the alcohol started peeling into it. And then from there, I don't know, can't talk about what happened in terms of the violence, but it definitely escalated.
But has that is there any hangover from that today? I mean, it's a long time ago, but is there any hangover from today in Cronulla? Or are the people living in Cronulla so new that they don't even remember it, most of them?
It's been like a long time now. So a lot of the locals have moved on from that. A lot of the people that have lived in Cronulla, a lot of the people that moved there for the reason and grew up in that community have moved away. When I did the surf, a lot of the people said Cronulla needed this. Like we haven't felt this sense of community since the grand final. That was the greatest thing that happened since the riots. Then when the Sharks won, obviously it was mayhem. It was just the happiest place to be, and that brought everyone together, and it just signified what Cronulla at its core is really about. No matter how many buildings and new people come in, it is true core. There's people that care about it, love it, that grew up there, and certain events need to shape it to give it that.
Why is Cronulla so parochial, do you think? I mean, what is it that, you've got places like Byron Bay, it's a special place to look at. Cronulla is a special place to look at. Manly's a special place to look at. But what is it about Cronulla that you feel, that you think you've grown up there, that you think is really special about it? And why are people attracted to the joint?
I think that it's on the outskirts of Sydney, and it's always sort of not been left out, but it's a big area. Sutherland Shire's got nearly 500,000 people, and it's always felt like it's got its own community. It's got its own identity, and I think people like that. They feel a part of something that little bit different, and like we've got everything where we are there, and I think people just respect. It's so beautiful. It's just, if you grow up there and spend a bit of time there, you've got everything at your doorstep. The national parks, a kilometre away on either side. There's one at Cronulla, there's one at Bundina, and it's got everything in its one place, an hour within the city. And I think people they get trapped in that bubble. I know I do. And I think they find that in such a big area zone, there's these little parts of community that you feel a part of by being down the beach and connecting with people that way.
Yeah. It's interesting you just say that, because I remember you talking about the national parks. I remember years ago, my younger brother who went to school out there, rang me up and he said, mate, there's really, I say years ago, a long time ago, I was like 20-something, and he said there's a big swell coming through, and he said the waves are coming into Gunnered Bay, which is sort of like on the other side of on the other side of Cronulla Station, sort of thing. Yeah. And I said, bullshit. He said, no, they are. They're serious. He said, because that's where he lived out that way. And he went to go there. And he said, no, you got to come and let's go and have a surf. And we ended up catching we jumped in off the back of, I don't remember which area, Dolan's Bay, one of those. We jumped in off there. We paddled into the middle of Gunnersbury Bay. And there was a wave that went for no joke, went for it felt like went for 100 meters across. I don't know if does that still exist?
Yeah, it does. It does. It changes with the sand. They dredge it out every couple of years, but that's a novelty wave that, when everywhere's blown out across Sydney, everyone comes and gets their surfing. Yeah, yeah.
So you grew up in this sort of, it's a pretty special environment then to grow up. Do you feel sort of somewhat blessed?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. The older I get, the more passionate about it. You know what I mean? I've lived there a long time. Stories that my dad's told me about growing up, how raw it was back then, and how it wasn't. Just the freedom they had back then, and then I still feel that now. You got to seek it a little bit more and make the effort to go on the adventures and take your exercise outside and challenge yourself. But I absolutely love it.
Yeah, because it's not though sort of the morning of the earth type environment that it was in the 60s and 70s when your dad was around.
No.
It has changed a lot.
Yeah.
With that and your community being the surfing community, do you think because when I was growing up, everyone was smoking joints and that was the thing, and in the 70s, and it was pretty normal, to be honest with you, especially in the surfing community. Other drugs weren't something that it really had much to do with, but smoking marijuana was a deal. That's what everyone was doing. You smoke before you go for surf. You didn't drink much, well, at least we didn't, and you're just chilling. But with it came a bit of a lot of people got depressed, or I don't know, got a few mental health problems, etc. Yeah. Is that a thing today still in the surfing world?
Definitely not. No, definitely not. There's always those, certain communities and it's always going to be around to some extent, but definitely not ripe in that.
So is it more athleticism?
Definitely,
today?
Yeah, definitely.
Because it wasn't about athleticism.
It's about the healthiness of it, the lifestyle, everything that's associated. It's not just the act of riding the wave; it's what's associated with the travel, the outdoors, the fitness, the connection with the ocean, all these things that we're all aware of that just bring so many more diverse range of people into it.
Yeah, it seems like that to me, looking from afar now, that it's much more about athleticism and exercise and all the stuff that's more cerebral.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, it was nearly like a counterculture.
Yeah.
For me, it's not rebellious, but a little bit rebellious, or a little bit. No, I ride waves, stuff what you guys are, but, and what we do is at night is we we travel somewhere, not just in Cronulla. We were hanging out with guys from Cronulla, but we travel, and wherever we go, we'd have a campfire, we'd have a few tents. We might go south or north, but the culture for us was listen to music on a little tape deck, but as I said, the joint would get passed around. We'd have pretty crappy food. I don't know how we survive nutritionally, but it seems to me now that surfing's become much, not professional, but much more structured. Like people eat good food, they drink a lot of water. They're really conscious of the exercises they need to do in order to surf properly.
Yeah,
and we just took surfing. We just jumped on a board and surfed.
Yeah,
we never thought to ourselves, well, maybe we've got to, carry a rock underwater and see how long we can hold our breath for. Which we probably should have learned how to do that sort of stuff, because I know a few times I thought I was going to drown, especially down at Coaldale. But how did that change? How do you think that change happened? I know you're not a surf historian, but you've been around. You've been around with your dad. You've seen a lot of history around surfing, particularly in that environment at Cronulla. Yeah. What were the things that sort of created change? Why are you different to what your dad was?
Just due to the resources and the popularity of it as well. Like even the difference between when I was growing up and the support I had my family and maybe a coach here or there. If you want to make it as a pro surfer, you got unlimited resources. There's high performance centers, there's a coach at every single beach, there's awareness around every element of surfing, with it down to the diet, down to, how detailed the equipment is. It's really accessible to tap into that high performance level of surfing.
Do you teach high performance in your
I do.
surfing
I have
school?
and I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does that mean? What does high performance surfing mean? Are you getting someone prepared for a competition, or just someone who can just get out there and carve up?
A bit of both, really. So high performance, yeah, both for competition if someone's going down that path, or it might be their technical skills and improving the technical skills to get them from where they're at to a high performance level so they compete, in their board riders clubs, or it's a pretty broad term, high performance, right? But it's just depending on what level they're aiming to achieve and what they've got to work on in that sense.
But is that the reason why Australia does so well, like on a global basis relative to our size, so well in like on the global surfing scene?
It does. It doesn't do as good as it should. Like it did have a golden era where we were winning world titles back in the 80s with Tom Carroll and those world champions, but we kind of lost that a little bit.
Yeah. Why do you think that is now?
I think it was how good our lifestyles are here.
We're not hungry enough.
Not hungry enough. Definitely not hungry enough. You look at the Brazilians, and they've won, I don't know, the last 8 world titles, and they come from they're hungrier for it. They've got less to fall back on if they don't make it as a pro surfer. It's the worst thing that happens here. You go and get a trade and work with your mates and earn some good money and live in a house in the suburbs. Like it's kind of the fallback. So there's not that urgency and that grit and determination needed for a long period of time. So it's like we've got it pretty good, and I think that's a little bit detrimental. And I think the camaraderie, I think we lost that a little bit. The Brazilians are down there supporting one another till the end of the event, and the Australians are that little bit more self-indulgent and more focused on themselves. And I just see how important we know how important that is, that community and feeling connected and a part of something can contribute to high performance. So you can't get to a world title on your own. You're going to need as much support as possible. And those little gains you get from having that support of that guy that travels with you, or, someone from your home country supporting you can make all the difference when it comes down to the upper echelon, the best in the sport.
I mean, when you go back to the era like Terry Fitzgerald and those sort of guys, and there were girls but less known at the time, but let's say, and I only know of the guys, and you said Tommy Carroll, but like that era, I remember that they were all somehow, they had jobs, everything in their life was around surfing. They'd be shaping boards, or glassing boards or something like that. Most of them didn't have trades. That was, they surfed, but they did some other job on the side as opposed to around the other way.
Yeah.
They had a job and then they did a bit of surfing.
Yeah.
The sort of, and it's like money caught up or something, or money caught up to Australians in relation to those who actually surf, and surfing's become a pastime hobby more. Yeah. Before it was a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Do you think there's been and Cronulla was one of the, Narrabeen was too, but Cronulla was one of the biggest examples of that.
Yeah.
And it was the guys that I knew that actually made it, their whole life was around riding waves. Everything from the moment they woke up to the moment they went to bed, they'd do something, they'd fill in their week to make a quid, because there was no money in it, surfing at the time. They'd fill in with other jobs, but mostly odd jobs. Very few of them were tradespeople.
Yeah.
Now it's sort of around the other way. It's like everyone's got a job, and now they do a bit of surfing on the side.
Yeah.
And that's not going to win you world titles.
Definitely not. No.
And that's why the Brazilians do, because that's their whole life is about surfing. They probably don't have any other choices.
Yeah,
like
there's
we do.
not as much to fall back on.
So is that because Cronulla's become affluent then?
Yeah, I think that has to contribute with it for sure. The ease of life, it's a good life whether you make it as a pro surfer or not. Like you're gonna have opportunities. They got less opportunities. Basically, they got to work harder for what they want to get.
Okay. Do pro surfers make good money? Like on average, I'm talking about now. I'm not talking about the best. On like
depends what good money is. Like how much is good money?
Yeah.
They can make a living. Not like it was 10 years ago, but yeah, they can make a living for it. They'd have to make their money work for them to get to the end of their career and actually, finish their career without having to fall into another trade or do something at the end of it. It's changed a lot in the last 20 years. When I was like, how old am I? I'm 40. So 25 years ago, I was getting paid 50, 60 grand a year as a 15 or 16-year-old. That's unheard of these days unless you're the next prodigy.
Oh, they don't pay that now to 15 or 16-year-olds?
No. Not at all. Unless you're you're the prodigy at top of it. Then there would have been 3 to 5 of us in Australia getting paid that type of money in being 14 or 15 years old. And now it's pretty rare to be getting in that money. They'll take the prodigies under their wing, and there might be 1 or 2 that are really pushed down that way, then rewarded. But yeah, there's not as much money as what they're in. They've got to work harder. They've got to get results. It's got to be more consistent. There's only like 10 spots a year to make it onto the world tour, and now the best surfing in the world is getting done on the tour. There's not as many avenues to go off free surfing, getting paid for your marketability or your style of surfing. They're doing the best surfing on the world tour in some of the best waves. So it's all focused on there, and you got to be in front of them. You've forgotten about so quickly these days, right? You used to have a magazine for a month before you'd see who was competing and doing their things, but now it's just so instant that you got to be relevant. Like you got to stay relevant.
Yeah. So maybe the money, the change in the way it all works is maybe there's much more money, or the money that follows surfing tours is demanding certain types of outcomes as well. And also, you know, as you just said, then Instagram and all those other things are starting to allow anybody in the world to do stuff.
Yeah.
Not just people from Cronulla who are near a beach, or people from Narrabeen who are near a beach. So it's sort of opening up the market to a whole lot of people.
For sure. And just the speed of video too, surfing so visual that 10 years ago they'd put an edit together, you'd get one every month. There'd be a DVD or a clip would come out on YouTube, Instagram, and it's not on Instagram, YouTube. And now it's so instant, you know what I mean? So you got to stand out. It's just a lot harder to stand out and be that value to a company.
It's funny, you know, I remember I was away when Morning of the Earth was released, the movie, but it was released not in mainstream movies. It was released in theatres, like shitty theatres, like down at Ulladulla or those sorts of places. And I remember going to this little theatre. It was like, it looked like an old church or something. And it was just plastic chairs all lined up against each other like that. And the joint was full. I was living at Manana at the time. Manana Beach is, but in front of Manana Beach is like I don't know if it's still there. There's a caravan park there. I was living there with 2 of my mates, and we lived there for 3 months. And we went.
You were living the Morning of the Earth. It sounds like.
Yeah, no, I was in a. It was, well, for me, it was such a significant thing. I mean, it's still one of my favorite albums, even for the music.
Yeah.
And I remember we were staying in a tent, and we went and watched the Morning Earth. And those days, to watch a movie about surfing, you'd literally see one in your lifetime. Like I'd never seen a movie before like that. And but now you're right. Like
so they had the impact, right?
Totally. I was sold 100%. Like to stick with it, and try and do all the things that they were doing in the movie. And you know, we started getting my mates in particular got trouble bag. I had to go to university, so I couldn't do it. But they got the trouble bag, and they all started traveling around the place, and they ended up in places like Indo and stuff like that, and started going around and finding all these waves.
Yeah.
But today the world's completely different, and everybody can get a taste of it. Shit, I'm going to have a bit of that, and all of a sudden you get a whole lot more talented people trying to learn to surf. Like during your era, much more there was only a few people tried surfing when I was around. It wasn't you either had access to the beach, which means you had to be around Cronulla somewhere or wherever, or you didn't try it. And you wouldn't try that. I mean, it's just too hard. Like, you know, getting up a surfboard is all too difficult. But now anybody can try it. It doesn't matter where they are. They can always get an Uber to the beach. You know, and if it looks glamorous.
Or a wave pool.
A what?
Or to a wave pool.
Oh, yeah, correct. Or a wave pool.
Yeah.
Have you been to a wave pool yet?
Yeah, I have.
Which one have you been to?
Went to the Melbourne one.
And what's it like?
It's good.
Yeah?
It's good fun. It'll never replace the ocean.
No.
Never replace the ocean, but you can get, as a training tool, I think it's the ultimate. Get the repetition in without the inconsistencies of the ocean. I think that's where I get excited about it for, where it'll push surfing with that, and the technology as it advances, it'll be a game changer in that sense. Do
you put your students into the wave pools?
No, I haven't done a trip with my school, but I will utilise the one that's getting made at Homebush for sure.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But you would put your kids, I guess the kids that you're training, are they?
Yeah.
Young kids.
Kids and adults, yeah.
Kids and adults. But is it the reason you would go put them into wave pools because of the consistency of the waves?
Yeah.
You can just keep...
What's all we're doing as surfers, right? We're seeking improvement. We're looking for repetition any which way we can. So
it's just practice.
And that's not guaranteed surfing. Every day is different. You know, every wave's different.
Yeah.
So it's a
and
good
crowded.
Lesson. It's a good teacher in that sense, and it's the fact that you've got to seek that, and that's the way that we train. As a coach, you're that second eyes for your student, and just helping them get the reps in and stopping them from making stupid mistakes.
Yeah, well, in other words, it's become much more professional.
Yeah.
It's much more structured.
Much more structured. Yeah.
Compared to when, say, you were coming through.
Definitely. Like everyone knew me because I was the 8-9-year-old that was surfing on his own, and there wasn't many kids doing that, even that was, early 90s.
But was your dad standing up there saying, hey,
Dad worked his ass off, so he was out there in the water towing me around until he knew I was confident enough to just chase my brothers over the hill and knew that I could handle my own if the surf picked up or got booked. So I used to wait for him at home for him to finish work. He was a builder and would drive and always worked on the North Shore. That's where the money was, I guess. And he would come home and I'd just be waiting for him after school from about the age of 8, just wait for him to get home. And my brothers would already be over the hill, but I wasn't allowed to go because I was a little tacker. I'm not big now, but I was only a mini guy. And he'd come home exhausted and take me over and pull me out by his leggy, push me into waves all afternoon. And then, I clearly remember the day where Mum's like, can he go on his own? Because Dad was just cooked. And, I could put board on the head, run over the hill and just never look back, man. One of my fondest memories of being told I could independently go surfing.
First board, who made it?
Oh, I got one of those cool like foamies for Christmas when I was about 6.
Yeah,
Dad
you have to be little to stand up on it.
Yeah, you had to be a little. Dad would just put his flippers on and take me out when I was that small. But then, a good time thruster. Still got it. One of my most treasured boards. Stoked I still kept onto that.
Yeah, so what about any of the local, I can't remember their names now, but there was...
Yeah, Jackson.
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 That
was more. There was Gordon and Smith before
Gordon
then.
Smith, yeah. Gordon Smith.
That was before my time. I never...
Yeah. But they still around there? But did you...
No, not when I was growing up. It was Force 9 and Jackson.
Yeah, I remember I had a swallowtail twin fin from Gordon Smith.
Oh, yeah, sick.
They probably don't even make them anymore, but I remember having. I think that is cool. But your boys would have been pretty small.
They were tiny.
Yeah, but
they
5'2",
got smaller.
5'6"
I started
or
off
something.
some thick ones, hand-me-downs, and then as I progressed and was ready, I jumped down to some smaller, like 4'10s and custom-made boards.
Wow.
Once I started showing some
full speed,
skill. Yeah,
lots of speed.
Yeah.
So I want to. Apart from having a little mag about you because there's a bit of nostalgia there for me, but I want to know why did you do this major feat more recently, surfing for 40 hours? Was it?
Yeah, 40 hours and 7 minutes.
And 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember the 7 minutes too. It's a world record.
It is a world record.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, just take me through. I'm going to ask you Wade in a moment, but what does that mean? You got to jump, paddle out, stay in the water for 40 hours and 7 minutes.
Yeah.
You can't come back in.
Well,
you're going to come back in if you've got to go to the bathroom or something. What happens?
Yeah, totally. So there was the rules around it were just based off the 2 people that had gone for that world record before, and it was about making it a marathon surf. So you had to paddle 2 from or 4 a wave every 10 minutes. So it was constant movement.
Right, you got to keep going.
That. Yeah,
you can't just sit there.
You can't just sit there and go, oh yeah, I've been sitting in the water. So it's constant movement and negotiating the waves and making decisions and physically moving around. So, and the previous world record was 30 hours and 11 minutes. And I did 40 hours and 7 minutes because I said I was going to do that earlier. I had been running. Like I said earlier, I did a marathon. I made a few lifestyle changes and started getting really fit and just like the idea of seeing what's possible. And I actually had a surf down in Melbourne in the wave pool. I went on a corporate day. The Barefoot Investor had this corporate day, and someone who works for me, his wife is a mortgage broker. She got invited. There's no way she was going. So sent me and her husband down. I was stoked. It was like the first week it opened, and we went down all pumped up, got in the water, did 2 or 3 hours. Then everyone there was, from the corporate world, started having beers around 10, 11 o'clock, and no one was in the water. So I just asked, can I stay out? So I ended up doing 7 hours and riding 100 waves. And then on the way home, I Googled, what's the record for the world's longest surf? We went down just for the day. And it was 30 hours and 11 minutes. And I thought, I reckon I could do that. I wonder if I could do that.
And how many waves? Do you have to add a number of waves to it as well?
He
you have to have caught a number of waves?
The previous record caught 436 waves.
He did?
Yep. Yeah. Josh Enslin, South African guy.
So it's the record is not only the time in the water and paddling, etc. for in and out.
Yeah. Well, there's so many variables, right? Like if the surf's big, you're constantly moving, you might not get that many waves. If you're duck diving, but you're paddling and trying to maintain your position.
So it's movement.
Movement,
constant movement.
Yeah.
And so could you get out any time to eat? How did you eat?
Yeah, well, there was some things we had to do because it was an event and we're raising money, and there was insurances and councils and other entities involved. So we had to we did a think about it, 29. I didn't do it. My wife and the foundation did it. They did, I think it was 29-page document. It was a pretty unique event, 2 nights of surfing, one person. So we had to have some protocols in place for safety. And one of them was after a certain amount of time, I think it was 10 or 20 hours, I had to come in and get medically checked, get my vitals checked from the paramedics that were on the beach the whole time.
Yeah. And did they have like a rubber ducky out there?
They did. They were meant to have one in the water, but the surf was too big the first morning, so they had it on the shore ready to go if they needed it as well.
Right. And what about hypothermia and stuff like that? Is that an issue? And was the water cold?
The water was really warm.
Yeah.
It was really warm. It was as warm as Sydney gets. It was 23 degrees, I think it was. So and I wore a 3-2 steamer the whole time. I was hot.
Oh, wow.
I was boiling most of the time. It was a 35-degree day. It was a gorgeous day with big waves, so I was more concerned of overheating, dehydration.
So how do you rehydrate then?
We had a plan to have 500 milliliters of water every half an hour.
Right.
So the lifeguards were out there on their ski when they could get in, or they were out the back. And then when I come in for a medical check, we'd
drink the water.
Yeah, drink water as well.
And did you have like a medical team to?
We did. I've got a friend who's a surgeon at the local private hospital, Cronulla Hospital, and he's a surfer as well. So I did some briefing with him before we did it, and went and saw a dietitian. We had a full plan in place, and that's so unlike me. I've done some adventures where I just put a backpack on and say see it to the wife and go for a night and just test myself, do things like that. So to have it, I learn a lot, being structured and doing that. I reckon without bringing the doctor in and doing it properly, I don't know if I would have got to my goal of 40 hours. I reckon I would have got the world record, but I don't think I would have been able to kick on that extra 10 hours and do that 40 hours. Yeah.
So you go all night.
Yeah.
So just to me, explain to me exactly whereabouts at Cronulla did you do that?
So at the alley. We chose the alley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just explain exactly where the alley is again.
The alley is like at the bottom of the Kingsway at Cronulla. So if you drive down to Cronulla towards the beach, there's a big set of lights, and that's the first break in front of you. A couple of restaurants and the Esplanade line it. And it's kind of the centre of Cronulla. A little wave there called the Alley where I grew up surfing, and a lot of history with that wave too. People used to hang down the alley and outside Joe's Milk Bar, and it's a pretty iconic spot for Cronulla.
And at night, were you worried about sharks?
Not at all. No.
But Cronulla's the point is, I've seen sharks out there in the past, but Cronulla itself, where you're talking about, it's not a lot. I don't know of ever being sharks there in the past. There probably are sharks there, but I don't remember anything sort of serious going on.
I've surfed there for 35 years, and I've probably seen one shark. Like definitely seen one. I probably got scared off a few times, but definitely seen one shark, and that was right out on the reefs. There's some pretty world-class waves out on the headland near Cronulla, and I surf there a lot, and I've seen some sharks you wouldn't want to see again. Definitely.
Yeah. So, but during the nighttime, I never liked surfing at night because I just thought it was a bit spooky. But what was going through your head? Like, was there any point where you went, "Oh, Jesus, this is a bit weird"?
The first night we started at 1 a.m. and it was.
So you started at 1 a.m.
Started at 1 a.m. And it was way bigger than I thought. You got a forecasting website, you expect it to drop off, but Mother Nature's Mother Nature.
And you can't see the waves at night, can you?
No, we had spotlights. We had big lights, like big commercial lights, 2 of them that were shining on it, but the surf was bigger than expected. We did a test the week before. I got to surf out the alley with my boy, who's 11. We had a really good night just testing lights, getting the angles right. And but when we got to the day, the surf was 2 foot bigger than we kind of expected it to be, which means it was breaking out further. So in terms of sharks, I was more focused on, getting through the waves and getting my wave count and sticking to my job was what I could that I had at hand. And that was pretty frustrating because I had this vision in my head that I'd be paddling out with my mates. So as part of the water security, my friends were just told me if anyone that had their first day could come out and be.
So they're allowed to sort of
accompany me in the water. So I was picturing high five on my mates.
Can you talk to them? Yeah.
Yeah, high five to my mates and having a good time as I set off for this to achieve this goal. But it was 5-6 foot straight closeouts. 10-second period. It was constant waves. It was hard work. We estimated I did about between 350 and 400 duck dives before the sun came up on that first morning. So I was working a lot harder than I anticipated.
Are you exhausted?
I was cooked by the time the first sunrise came up.
And what were you thinking to yourself? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to make it.
No, never thought that for a second. I thought this is really going to make me earn it. So I was in a a place like a 7-8 hour surf is pretty taxing. Doing that many duck dives is another level. And yeah, it was. I was just at in the pain cave a lot earlier than I was expecting to. So that was a little bit of frustration.
So what do you do when that happens? I mean, what does Blakey say to himself? How do you manage that? As you said, put it in the pain cave. I mean, how do you manage that so you don't get overwhelmed?
I think it's drawing on past experiences. It's like it takes more than just a bit of self-belief, you know. I put it down to the whole achievement to being something that I've never manifested and thought about like I had before. So I was in these moments, and no matter how bad, no matter how sore my eyes were, and they were sore from going under so many waves, even by that first sunrise.
Yeah, the salt and everything.
The salt and my skin too, you know, like you're going in and under out of the water. It's pretty taxing on the skin. Through that whole process, I felt like I'd been there before. You know, I felt like I trusted the process like I'd never trusted anything in my life, that no matter what it threw at me, I was going to get through it. So even I wasn't expecting to have to sort of I wasn't expecting to be in those moments until a lot longer, you know, maybe after the world record, but that hit earlier and it just made me think, well, it's really going to make me earn this. I'm not riding a mini mail in Waikiki. I'm surfing 5-6 foot closeouts in Sydney and still managing and actually smashing my goal of the amount of waves I wanted to ride and continuing on.
Were you able to sort of, are you able to, in terms of the record, sort of just avoid paddling out through the break and go around the break? I mean, could you?
Not that first morning. No, like the swell dropped off. It's all played out perfectly. You know, it went really good. I really earned that first day. Even when the sun came out, the waves were still 4 or 5 foot. Like ideally, if you're going for a world record of surfing for the longest, you'd want it in Bali on a 2 foot shore break, catching waves and barely going under the water. Like you're still going to achieve the world record. But I definitely did it in the most authentic way that I'm proud of. And I wanted.
It wasn't an easy record.
No, it wasn't easy. Like people say, oh, you got perfect waves for it. I'm like, I definitely didn't see the first 24 hours of that surf, you know, where I was duck diving so much and had to work hard. I ended up riding 707 waves.
Wow.
So that equates to a wave every 3 minutes, 24 seconds. And the surf was 4 to 5 foot.
Well, how come you didn't seize up, like your body physically, like muscular wise, like especially your lower back, so you're arching your back when you're laying on the board? Like,
I think I was the most conditioned you could be for it. I've been a surfer my whole life. I teach it. I still love it. I do it in my spare time. I'm down there coaching people. I think that's something that I never had any doubt with. It never even crossed my mind of whether I was fit enough. And the unknowns to me were what's going to happen to your skin, your eyes, and I didn't know anyone that surfed longer than 10 hours. And there was nothing to draw from. So it was just, again, accepting that I was going to go through some pain and I'd get through to on the other side. Anything
lasting? Because I know when Ned Brockman, he sat in that chair, told me that he had some major issues after his run from Perth to Bondi, Cottesloe to Bondi. Did you have any major injuries after this? Like something that sort of stuck with you?
Not really. Like I've still got this sort of physical and mental fatigue. I train a lot, do a lot of adventures, and I still feel like I'm not 100%. I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but I think there's something still a little bit missing, that I've got to replenish somehow. That'll take a bit of time to get through it. Obviously, my shoulders they're fine now, but for about 6 weeks, it felt like I just had a 10-hour surf every time I paddled out. I'm surfing every day, and I feel like even still now, there's a sense of I'm not quite at my where I want to be with my mental space and my physical ability.
Are you a bit mad? Like, I mean, you're one of those mad bastards who just do crazy shit because you can and you won't let it beat you. I mean, is that part of your mentality?
No, I think it's just seeing what's possible, just loving that question to myself, like seeing what I'm capable of. I don't think see myself as anyone special, and I think I know from what I've been through to get to this point that anyone can do it. And I like doing it because it shows people they can. We've all got us inside of you've got to want to do it and be prepared to do the hard work that gets you to these points. And
the prep, you mean?
Yeah. Like I'd surf, surf that same spot. Like I was saying earlier, felt like I'd been there before. When I got to the really hard stages of the surf, my body was moving. I wasn't thinking. I was just completely connected with the environment around me, and it was trusting the process. It was a very unique experience that I was going through, and everyone deserves to feel that at some point. It was amazing.
I see you raise a lot of money for charity, and it's for mental health.
Yeah.
Was that part of the driver, or the part of the thing that made you stay?
Yes. My dad took his own life 10 years ago. And that was one of the driving forces to do something significant in memory of him. I was planning doing a run from Currumbin to Cronulla because it sounded good.
Yeah,
and
CC.
I wanted to run along the coast, connect with people I used to surf with and make it about community and support, and do a run. I was going to do 50 Ks a day. And then that idea was kind of blowing in my head, and I mentioned it to my brother who's on the board at the Chumpy, and he goes, oh yeah, we'll support that, not that interested in it. And then I said, I've got this other idea. I told him about the wave pool. And he goes, that's you. That's what you're meant to do and be. And I thought, he's completely right. I'm a surfer, and I want to do something authentic and true to myself. And it just evolved from that, with support of them, my wife and family, and it just evolved from that.
What do you think your dad would think seeing you do that? Like, given that he was probably one of the ones who used to take you down there and pull you out through his leg rope out to the waves when you're 7 or 8 years of age. After he'd spent a hard day working on the tools on the North Shore, trying to earn a quid to pay for the mortgage that you guys lived in.
5 boys.
5 of them, yeah, totally. So, and he's got a little grommet there. Blakey, like, is probably saying, Dad, come on, take me out. I don't want to go home. Yeah. Anything he would have felt about what you did?
I think he would have been extremely proud. And I think he would be the one person that knew that I was never a doubt I wasn't going to get it done. Seeing the determination I showed, chasing my big brothers from when I was a tiny little grom, and wanting to be out in the big surf, and, never having that fear, just for the love of it.
Did your dad always believe in you?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, through, not just when you first started, but through school competitions, and I guess you were a schoolboy. Did you go on the schoolboy competitions?
Yeah.
Like Surf U School.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to? Which school?
I went to Cronulla and Woolooware.
Yeah. Okay. So you surf for Woolooware in the schoolboys competition.
both those schools. Yeah.
Yeah. And
when
your dad always believed in you?
He did.
Yeah.
He did. He was quiet. He was different to me. He didn't talk as much. He was very, very calm, and yeah, he was very humble. So, and I was more hypo and wanted to prove to my bigger brothers and surf and catch a million waves, and I was always right into that. It was my singular focus, and I think he loved that, because he got so busy as a in his early 20s, having babies and working his ass off. So I think he just saw that I genuinely loved it and loved that. He never put any pressure on me. There was never an inkling from him, not a question or a doubt or anything about why I was doing it. He just wanted the best for me, and that's translated for me and my boys too, for sure.
How does your father taking his own life? I mean, do you mind talking about it for a second or two?
Sure.
I just
No, sure.
Was he depressed, or what do you think was the issue?
Yeah, definitely suffering from anxiety and depression and general wellness. Like, he worked his ass off. As I told you before, we had 5 boys. There was a period of 10 years from when he was 30 to 40 around there, where he worked 7 days a week, be working in the North Shore, come home and do his own jobs, the renovations on the houses that we bought in Cronulla and Carringbar. And I mean, it's just reflecting on that. It's just crazy, going through the stress of that with 5 boys, and now being a parent myself and a small business owner, and just knowing what he's been through. That's taxing, and then continuing on and working for himself, and through my own personal evolution since he's passed away, and learning more about myself and questioning, becoming more self-aware. I look back and think of some things that he missed out on, like looking after himself, and he was obviously a very selfless man that put his family first, and to a point that it was detrimental to his own mental health.
So he was cooked.
Yeah.
Basically, physically, then become mentally cooked.
Yeah, had sleep apnea too. Wasn't sleeping properly. He went to the doctors and got tested overnight, and woke up 150 times that night and stopped breathing. So he was, and still 60-year-old man working 5 to 6 days a week, and still trying to get ahead. They've always supported me and my 4 brothers and helped us financially, and just amazing parents, but selfless to the point where, it was it obviously took a toll on his mental health.
He doesn't want to hang around anymore. I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I know it's a bit of a selfish act in that you affect a lot of people, but from like if I'm looking from afar. It obviously hasn't happened to me, and not obviously, but it hasn't happened to me as a kid looking at his parents. But equally, I take the view that people are entitled to be selfish at some stage in their life if that's what they want to do, to make themselves. It's about time sometimes. Sometimes it's just time. I don't want to live like this anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't find it to be a selfish act. Some people say it is, but I don't find it to be a selfish act, because at some stage in your life, you have to do something that's for you.
Yeah.
Especially when you spent your whole life doing something for everybody else, like you saying your dad did.
Yeah.
Just make sure you and your brothers, and your mum and everyone's all well looked after. And
I'm sure he felt stuck, I'm sure he felt stuck in his situation and working so hard still. And, And
what effect did it have on you then? Did you say, hey, wow, God, Dad, what have you done? Like, because obviously you're close to your
I've been
man.
through every emotion since it's happened. There's been times where obviously deep level of sadness that you get confused about because it hangs around for so long. And, you learn eventually that sadness is natural. If you love and care about someone so much, it's natural to feel that way and grieve it. And it's nothing to be embarrassed about there at all. It's just that connection you have with someone and respect. So, yeah, and then I've been frustrated. I've been through my own things, being a young father, small business, that's relying on the weather, and that can be frustrating, these uncontrollables, and being the best husband and dad I can be to my beautiful boys, and being there for them as much as I could, because my dad was so busy working, and we loved him and just wanted time with him, and we did get it. Yeah, we've got great memories with him, but even more would have been better.
Yeah.
And no money. I wouldn't want a cent. I don't want anything to do with that at the time. And his presence was, because he was calm and mellow. It was just always was really grounding to be around him. So
And how has that inspired you then? Because at the end of the day, you don't want anything to be a waste. So what, especially someone taking their life, what do you feel like you've been inspired to do or got from that, apart from doing the 40 hours and 7 minutes, 70 minutes or 7 minutes?
7
minutes.
7.
Apart from that, what have you learnt from that in relation to, say, your own relationship with your own kids and your missus?
Well, we touched on it before, but it's just about putting yourself first. When you're the best version of yourself, you deliver yourself better to your wife, to your husband, wife or husband, your kids, your community, your business, and that's where you have the ripple effect. Where you can see that you're pursuing a better quality of life for yourself, then you turn up better every single day. And my dad was so selfless that he didn't see that or wasn't aware of those things. Like in his generation and in your generation, there wasn't any talk about wellness. There wasn't those things. It's getting more and more common, and it's almost saturated. But there's good messages. There's good messages amongst it. But it's just that key message. Like if I look after myself and I'm fit and healthy and feel good within me, I can show up for my boys, show up for my wife. And
it's nearly like, to me, the 40 hours and 7 minutes and the 700 odd waves and everything you did in the event is nearly a sideshow, because for me, now they got to know you and talk to you, because you raised a lot of money for charity too, by the way, for mental health. It's more, to me, just from talking to you, it's a lot more about your dad, the selflessness of your father, the lessons you learned from him taking his own life, you becoming more self-aware and more, not selfish, but doing things for yourself to make yourself the best version of you can be.
Yeah.
To inspire your own kids and others. That seems to be the main show.
Yeah,
Am I right?
I think that's what I've learned along the way. That's where you have the effect on people. You show people what's possible. And that's a question I've asked myself, and not enough people ask it for themselves, putting that extra hard work and not limiting ourselves to what you really want to do and be in your life, And I think that's the message here, If we do become more self-aware and look after ourselves, we can we can do some amazing things.
What would you say to someone who's maybe a surfer, who's probably smoked too many joints, maybe, or is just feeling a bit shitty about their life, not feeling great?
Yeah.
But as someone who has aspirations and dreams, but doesn't feel so good, what would you say to themselves? What would you say to them?
So to be honest with yourself, know that you're worthy of living a better existence, and you got to be honest and know that there is hard work ahead to get there, but it's definitely worth it. Everyone deserves to feel awesome. I keep saying that. It sounds so cheesy, but
no, it's not cheesy. In context, it's not cheesy.
Yeah, I believe that, and it doesn't just fall into your lap. You got to go after it. You've got to seek the adventure and look at it as a challenge. And when you see progress in your life, that's where it keeps it interesting. When most people get stale and bored or stuck in something, there's no progress. It doesn't seem like there's any progress anywhere. So it can be in any aspect of their life, a career or a sport or a new hobby or skill. And it's sort of that vulnerability they need to have first up, and then that sort of something new. Like a lot of my friends and people I know that have reached out since doing this, and even before, where I'm always challenging myself, like, oh, I like what you do. And it just shows them that what's possible. Like, you don't have to be, like, I'll say these names again, but Paul Gallen or Mick Fanning. You can be Blakey Johnston, a parent with 2 kids, and make that extra time for yourself to achieve these goals. And that's how you inspire people, along the way.
That's really interesting, because what you just hit on something really important. A lot of people look at Mick Fanning or Paul Gallen, and think, oh, I'm never going to achieve that. But what you've done is you've sort of democratized it. You've sort of said, hang on, I've done something like that. Like, you play State of Origin or do what Mick's done, but still you did something. You hold a world record because you thought you could.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty important lesson.
Yeah.
Especially if you're feeling a bit shitty about yourself, but even if you're not,
yeah.
and you're just looking for a bit of guidance or a little bit of inspiration.
Yeah.
Is that where you see yourself? Is that what you've done? You've sort of brought it down to democratization. You brought it down to the lowest common denominator. I'm Blakey Johnston, a bloke from Cronulla, married, couple of kids. I'm a surfer, but I can do this.
Well, unintentionally. Like, I've always been someone that's been compassionate and caring and kind, and when you're younger, you don't know where that goes. In business, it can be detrimental to your success and stuff as well. But I know now that through things I've done personally for myself and through people reaching out and the effect it's had, that's what my purpose is, to help people realize their potential. And, when you see progress and set goals and go after certain things, that you become a better version of yourself along the way. And that's inspiring to anyone.
And be patient about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Let it roll out.
Let it roll out. Things don't happen. That world record was 25 years of surfing and spending time down that beach for it to all fall into place. It wasn't just, I thought of an idea and I'm a surfer and I want to get famous. It's bigger than me.
Yeah.
And it's going to help a lot of people. And that's what made it so easy to know that I was going to get to the end, I envisioned that. And actually, it was the first time that I've been a pro surfer and in sport and visualised things and pictured myself winning contests and doing this stuff. But this, with the world record, I'd never embodied it like I did. Like, I'd run every morning and I'd run barefoot past the alley where we did it and just envision this massive crowd. And I was like, kind of start giggling at myself, go, as if it's going to be there. No one's going to give a shit. But I'm going to do this thing anyway and do it for mental health and do it in the name of my dad and prove to myself that I can do what I seek out to achieve and be authentic with it, not just talk about it. And that was a big part of why I did it too. I've said it, I'm going to fucking do it.
No, I actually think it's fantastic. I actually like your reasons for it too. I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Did you grow that beard during that 40 hours? Because it looks like looks like some old salty dog. Like, it's a beauty. Like, have you always had a beard like that?
No, it's been like 3 years in the making.
3 years, oh wow.
When I started running a lot and starting doing ultra marathons and those things, I was like, here it is. It's a part of me.
What's it like when you're surfing though? Does it get all wet and sort of, do you put a band around or something?
It just flows in the wind, man. It just.
It's really cool. Like, it's really cool. I mean, and not many people can pull it off. You do.
Cheers.
Blakey Johnston, thanks very much.
Thanks, Mark.